Geez, guys, there's times in life when if you don't know what to do, if you don't know how to, if you can't laugh, if you're so, I don't know what's the word. I'm just gobsmacked, absolutely flippin' gobsmacked. Owen Farrell got off scot free from his red card. I'm just stunned. I don't know what World Rugby was thinking. I really don't, and I'm trying to understand here because I did a video yesterday, and you might have seen it. If you haven't, please go watch it. But it's quite clear from the incident itself, and let's first leave Owen Farrell's record out of it, which should have come into play anyway. We keep on getting told that intent is not a part of it. It's head contact that matters, whether accidental or not. Otherwise, we wouldn't see players for an accidental clash of heads getting red cards, which we do, and getting bans for it. Just locally, Oxen Che got a red card ban for an accidental clash of heads in the URC earlier this year. 3 weeks. There are other players who've done the same. They've got also bans for accidental clash of heads. And we keep on getting told it's not intent, it's the head clash that is the thing. But today's decision with Owen Farrell just takes the cake. There's no ways you can take World Rugby serious and their disciplinary serious after this decision. And I'm sorry, I feel very strongly about this. There's times where I've called for common sense. There's times where I've said, that the decisions have been too harsh. And fair enough, all our biases probably play into this. But this is a clear-cut decision. There was, if you look at that, and we'll look now at the incident again, it was a clear-cut, textbook red card. Owen Farrell dropped his shoulder, no attempt to wrap, with force to the head of Taine Basham. And don't forget, Taine Basham went off the field. He failed an HIA, and he didn't come back to the field. So where's the concern for player welfare? Where's the concern for any of this? And that's where I think there's a bigger question here. We're on the eve of a Rugby World Cup. There are so many decisions that come down to minute details that could affect players' livelihoods, that could affect teams that have gone into this World Cup and really placed everything on the line, and they could have their season, their careers, everything ended by a red card in a game. So what does this Owen Farrell decision tell us? It tells us that World Rugby aren't serious about head contact. That's the first thing. Because why preach it and tell us all and turn the game upside down with red cards the whole time that disrupt the game and then don't follow through with a textbook red, right? This is not only about Farrell. This is bigger than him. Secondly, you've got a guy who's a serial offender. If you look at the video I did yesterday, there's so many of these incidents that he's been involved in. He hardly ever gets penalised for them. He's the guy who gets away with the most in World Rugby. And you can tell me I'm wrong, and that's fair enough. You don't have to agree with my viewpoint, but it's hard to see and it's hard to explain to fans as a journalist when you see things like this happening, that there aren't two sets of rules out there. A player like Johnny Sexton who abuses an official. We saw Dylan Hartley get 12 weeks for doing the exact same thing. But because it's before World Cup, Johnny Sexton got off with a slap on the wrist and was allowed to play in the World Cup. Now Farrell, who's England's poster boy, gets the same sort of lenient treatment by disciplinary committee that keeps on wanting to tell us that head contact is a big thing in rugby. But let's take this a step further. What message does it send to referees? What message does it send to a referee that goes into a bunker, and we have this wonderful bunker system now that we're going to go, and after 10 minutes of contemplating that, they think they got the decision right after watching multiple angles, and only coming back afterwards, and we getting the decision, getting told 2 days later by a disciplinary panel that you got the decision wrong. All this was on the premise of being accepted that there was a change in direction which shouldn't have made the difference. Farrell dropped his shoulder, he hit Basham in to the head, and that's a red card. It's a textbook red card. Intent doesn't come into it, change of direction doesn't come into it, and I don't understand what this does. There's some real dangers in this precedent that's being set. Of course, World Rugby can appeal their own disciplinary, but they won't, because that will just show how farcical the decision was in the first place. So we'll have to all swallow this, and Owen Farrell will go to the World Cup, and at some point he'll probably do the same again, and at some point people will have the same outcry. But it's hard. It's hard for anybody. Even the English press went on this weekend saying, the Times had the wonderful headline, it's getting harder and harder to defend Owen Farrell. And this is not about a hate for Owen Farrell. I know South Africans, we've got our own love-hate relationship with the guy, that obviously got away with murder against Andre Estesen in 2018. But it's not about that. It's about what message it sends to the rest of world rugby. It sends a message out there that it's okay in certain circumstances. If you go and hit a guy in the head, you'll get away with it as long as you've got a good lawyer. And there, you've got to give credit to England's lawyers, because they had a brilliant argument, obviously. So much enough to explain to a 3-man Australian disciplinary committee that this wasn't a red card. And it flies against everything. Everything World Rugby's told us in the last 3 years, every single red card we've seen, every single action we've seen, the head contact protocol, all that is just out the window with this thing. So I know there's going to be a lot of anger around a lot of people there, and it's hard to get. It's really hard when, look, it doesn't affect me personally, it doesn't affect the Springboks. I don't think it's going to affect England's chances. I don't think England are in a good place at the moment. And yeah, there will be people who will claim this as a win. But in rugby has shot itself in the foot once again. We try and the game's so complicated as it is, and I know while we're spitting fire here, it's easy to get emotional about things, but the game's so complicated. We try and explain it to fans the whole time. We try and justify decisions, and we try and explain to people why there is a head protocol contact protocol. Why there is a head contact protocol, and what happens? World Rugby comes and takes everything they've told us for the last couple of years, and they throw it out the window. This is an insult to every single player who has had a brain injury, every player who's got injured from a shoulder to the head, and every player who's stood up for their head contact protocol, and every referee, every fan who's defended it over the last couple of years. I'm sorry, this is a cowardly decision. It's a travesty, and anybody who says differently, well, you can disagree with me, but this is probably one of the worst decisions I've ever seen a World Rugby Disciplinary Committee make. There's no two ways about it. How he got off scot-free from that is absolutely gobsmacking. It's absolutely ludicrous. It's absurd. It's something that makes you question rugby's values. If we're okay with things like that, I don't know. And is it just because, again, you've got better legal representation? And I don't know. It's hard to see a different fact where you see the whole of the Twitter rugby community from all over the world agreeing with everything that was said. So anyway, let's have another look at the incident, and let's talk about it there. And I'm going to show some of the Twitter responses as well. It's very raw afterwards. And yes, maybe something more will come out. But this is exactly how the decision went down. That's my feeling for it. I think it's totally ludicrous. So here we have the actual disciplinary decision. Comes up with the normal sort of thing. That's the law. Player must not tackle an opponent early, late, or dangerously. Dangerous tackling includes, but is not limited to, tackling or attempting to tackle opponent above the line of the shoulders, even if the tackle starts low. So there's the Judicial Committee, all three Australians. Adam Castleton was also on the Johnny Sexton Committee as well. Here we get to the crux of the matter, that player acknowledged while he had committed an act of foul play, he denied that it was a red. After reviewing all the evidence, questioning the play in detail, and hearing submissions, the committee concluded that the foul play review officer was wrong to upgrade the yellow card to a red. Now that's quite important, guys. It says further here that the mitigation should be applied to a high degree of danger. The committee found that the late change in dynamics by England's two interaction brought a sudden and significant change in direction of the ball carrier. In the committee's opinion, the mitigation was sufficient to bring the player's act of foul play below the red card threshold. And so here's this part that really gets to me as well. The committee tries to say that there should be no criticism made of the foul play review officer. Unlike the foul play review officer, the committee had the luxury of time to debate and consider in private the incident. So So they're basically saying that, there's no, he got it wrong. He got it totally wrong. But don't worry, we're not going to criticize him because heaven forbid we will criticize. You have to wonder what that message that sends to referees at all, and but refs are going to be in that bunker system in the World Cup. So before we go to World Rugby's rugby protocols, I just want to have a look at the incident again. Yeah, they're saying that Jamie George pushes him into Owen Farrell. I think that's rather ridiculous to be, if you're anyone looking at this whole thing. There's no ways that even if he did push him into it, it doesn't take the onus away from Owen Farrell. He drops the shoulder, he goes in with the shoulder, and there's head contact. Remember that Tane Basham got failed an HIA. Look at it. That's normal speed, guys. That's normal speed. He goes in with the arm and there's head contact. Whether Jamie George pushed him or not, if that was the case, then Peter Steph du Toit shouldn't have got a red card against France last year when Kwagga Smith pushed him into the play at the ruck. Okay, so let's start with this is World Rugby's own head contact protocol. And so we start with the first question: has head contact occurred? Yes. So you go down. Was there any foul play? Yes, there's definitely foul play there. Even Owen Farrell admitted it in the disciplinary committee. So yes, the player's at fault. And then what was the degree of danger? Now, first of all, the first thing you have to have a look at that is whether it was a high. The referee and the TMO determined it was high level of danger. You have to take into account that Basham didn't come back from a HIA, so it was definitely high. There's contact to the head with force. He dropped his arm. He was in the upright position. And yeah, to me, the bottom line, and as a lot of lawyers will tell you who do these sort of disciplinary cases, the question comes down to, was the tackle ever legal? And there is a resounding no. I know that doesn't say anything here on this contact, but if it's a red card, then they ask, is there any mitigation? Mitigation will not apply for intentional or highly reckless acts of foul play. Well, to be very honest, if the tackle's not legal, then it is intentional or highly reckless. And so, therefore, this disciplinary decision makes absolutely no sense. Guys, we shouldn't also forget that Owen Farrell's a serial offender. He's got away with this a lot before, and he had to go to tackle school after getting a ban in a club game earlier this year when he was supposed to, when it was manipulated, when it was outcome was given that he could go to tackle school and still play in the Six Nations. Just going to go through some of the Twitter responses. There's from journos across the globe. I think the point from this one is, what's the point in a tough and trusting disciplinary process if it's neither tough nor trusting? And as for the problem-solving bunker system, I think we all agree on that point I made as well. But my colleague Craig Ray from Daily Maverick says that, yeah, the RFU have the best lawyers, and that's not what it should be about. Eventually, it should be about what happens on the field and not what the lawyers say. I don't think there's too many people who disagree with that. Even my old mate Stuart Barnes, sometimes it's the best to laugh, because if you're not going to laugh, you're going to cry. And I think there's too many. This result, if you can't laugh at this result because it's just so ludicrous, it's actually so sad. I'd even say my mate Paul Williams, who is probably the most optimistic and decent guy on rugby Twitter. If it even perplexes him, then yeah, I think we're all the same. Across from Ireland, Rory O'Connor, Ruardry. I hope I'm saying that right, guys. It's impossible to take rugby's approach to brain injuries, foul play seriously after this. Another Irish journo here, Brendan Gallagher, also agree. Complete farce. Insults every T2 players that had to serve months and months for disciplinary action. I think you're getting the trend here. Everybody's agreeing. Owen Farrell's united the rugby, and he's very sober take as well. Exactly, he says it's high shoulder, no attempt to wrap. There's no argument in this one either. I think we all agree. From Australia, another viewpoint. Exactly, there is no. Why is the intent being ignored to the point of the red card being rescinded? Well, it's very clear to me. If the tackle was illegal to start with, there can't be any mitigation. George Mahalo, of course, got 10 weeks for his tip tackle, which is a bit ridiculous, as Peter Aki says here, and he's not quite happy. I'm not going to repeat what he says there, but I think you can read it yourself. It makes a bit of a mockery of the entire system. Charles Richardson agrees with me, Telegraph's writer. Sport Mirrors Society, better legal representation yields better results, and I think that's part of the bigger problem. And the final tweet on the matter comes from my old mate Kobus Visser, who agrees it makes a mockery of the bunker system. Just everything that we've got up to this point just makes absolutely no sense with this decision. Otherwise we might not have agreed with the protocols, but we would have at least known there was a process in place. This, yeah, I don't know. It just makes, as Cooper says, makes a mockery. Sorry, guys. As I was finishing that up, I saw that statement had come in from Progressive Rugby. That's the group that obviously monitors and is fighting for the concussion protocols, and is also taking on World Rugby in terms of that, representing the ex-players. Professor John Fairclough saying today's astounding decision to overturn the red given to Owen Farrell for his tackle on Tane Basham has made a mockery of World Rugby's claim that player welfare is the game's number one priority. Additionally, despite protestations and the judgment to the contrary, it is critically undermined the newly introduced bunker process before a global tournament and eroded confidence in the game's judicial process, which is meant to help protect those playing the game. To be honest, I couldn't have said it very much better. I think it just underscores the unity of everybody saying the same thing of how ludicrous this all is. Sorry, guys, I know I get a bit heated here, but this is this type of thing that we try and sell the game, and we try and tell people. And how do you tell kids to tackle properly? In England, there's this whole debate going about tackle law around the world at club rugby level that you have to tackle waist height. There's all sorts of things going in there, and then you say that's the way you must tackle, and then at the professional level you allow this to happen. I'm sorry, it's ridiculous. Anyway, it's hard to explain to people. It's hard to explain to their kids how that is not a dangerous tackle, and it's hard to explain that that's within the laws of the game, because it plainly isn't. And Owen Farrell's magic has struck again. Somehow he has the Midas touch. He seems to get away with everything. And all I can say, my last point on that is, if I'm ever in trouble, I'm phoning Owen Farrell's lawyers. Anyway, guys, thanks for watching. Please subscribe if you haven't, and leave me your comments below. Love to see your take on it. Thanks.